Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's Freddie again. We're back in the studio. I have to apologize for not posting, a really long time, actually. Um, I just wrapped up my album. It's called Beyond the Sea of Trees, and I'm releasing it with Jakarta Records sometime in the spring. But we basically kind of submitted everything, and we're just kind of waiting for the turnaround for, like vinyl and other stuff like that. So I'll keep everybody posted of when it's going to be available as well as like promo stuff. But we're here in the studio. I have my orange juice. I have this honey chamomile something tea. And I have Ricola. Because all of those ingredients can only mean one thing. I'm healthy as a clam, right? No. I'm a little sick, so please bear with me for this video. It's nothing major. I just kind of have like a little bit of cold or something like that. I don't know. But here we are. On the screen, we have Acid Pro. Basically, it's a DAW. This is the first software that I used when I first started making beats, pretty much. Yeah, this was back in like maybe 2000 ish. I started using Acid Pro. This was like version 2 point something, 2.0. And then I used it for a long time, all the way up to Acid Pro 7. And then it was basically in limbo for like the longest time. It never really updated itself. And then I made the switch over to Ableton like around 20 or 2005, maybe 2005, 2006. And then I've just been using Ableton ever since. But yeah, this is like the first software that I used pretty much before anything. This is where I kind of learned how to make beats in a way. I was kind of just using it as loops because Sony is very friendly as far as like kind of like a loop based DAW. But yeah, it's kind of like your standard DAW, like Pro Tools or Logic or even Ableton in arrangement mode. But yeah, I'm just gonna go over a few beats here, some old stuff. I wanted to show some different beats, a few different beats anyway. But all the files are all messed up because I haven't visited any of these beats in like maybe, I don't know, almost 15 years. So these are pretty old. But yeah, if you're familiar with Acid Pro, it was part of like a creative suite that Sony bundled, pretty much. Not bundled, but it was part of a creative suite. It was Sony Acid Pro, which was the audio side of things, and it had Sony Vegas, which was like the video editing program, and it had like one more, maybe like some photo editing program. I don't know. But yeah, this was kind of like the creative suite of Sony. And then Sony left Acid Pro and maybe Vegas, but Acid Pro 7 for like the longest time, it was in like limbo for like the longest time. And then I don't know how recently, but in the past like few years, Acid Pro was bought by this company called Magix. And this is what you're seeing now. This is Acid Pro 8. And it pretty much looks almost the same as when I was making beats on 7, but probably with a few new things. But yeah, let's go ahead and just get into it. This first beat is called Bicer, and this was a track that I released when I was just doing a lot of like free little EPs before I had any kind of like mild success as a producer. I was just kind of doing things really independently, just releasing stuff on my own. This is like MySpace days, and I was just kind of like connecting with artists. But here we go. that was it. We're going to go ahead and break it down. So when I first started making beats on this program, I I didn't have any kind of MIDI controller. I had like this really cheesy keyboard, and it wasn't until later that I bought like this USB to MIDI keyboard adapter, and that was like my first MIDI keyboard. It was like this old Casio keyboard, but I was lucky enough that it had MIDI ins and outs. But before I had any kind of like controlling pad or anything like that, this is basically how I would chop samples. I would take the sample, if we can kind of zoom in here, so you can kind of see. I would use a loop basically, and then I would make slices here in kind of particular areas, and then I would adjust the pitch of the sample. So with this one, it says that it's beat map basically, but you can go in. You probably can't see that, but let me see if I can adjust this. Maybe I could just do this. No, you can't see it. But anyway, I would make like slices within the loop, and then I would adjust the timing on the sample itself. Like I would pitch it down or pitch it up, and then after you made those slices and you adjusted the timing or the pitch on each of those slices, it would kind of shift the whole audio file like over, or like, and basically you would kind of get this like this weird kind of like staggered effect when it comes to the samples. So if we go here, let me see. Oh, this is the filtered one. Here, let's go to this one. But I think for this one, I just kind of like chopped it in like the sample in particular or certain areas. And then I would just kind of cut and paste. It was a lot of cutting and pasting. This is basically, I was just a keyboard and mouse kind of producer at this time. And then I would basically just kind of duplicate the track just to add effects to a different track. So this kind of has like a wah and like a resonant filtered kind of effect. But it's pretty much the same as it's just like a duplicated track of the original sample. And then the drums are all kind of this, if you can kind of see where my cursor is. So right here, it was a lot of just cutting and pasting. So I would work with like a 4 to 8 bar loop. And if we zoom in here, whoops, I would just basically cut and paste kicks and snares to particular parts of the grid. I think I showed this in like a old Ableton video, but that's pretty much how I made beats, or drums anyway. Let me see if I can solo this stuff here. So it kind of just starts with this. And then you add. So this audio right here, this track 10, this highlighted one, I for this beat, I think I was utilizing some third-party plugins. This sounds like Addictive Drums, and what I would do is I would play it like on, like on a MIDI keyboard or something like that, get the MIDI information, and then I would bounce it back into its audio form here. So that's what you're hearing. So that's that, and then this track down here, this green one, is a tambourine, whoops, that I just recorded into the program, basically. And then this is like a ride, basically, that I recorded from Addictive Drums. And that's pretty much the drums. But it was just like a lot of cutting and pasting and then layering stuff on top of the initial kick and snare. Yeah. And then this track right here is the bass line. So one of my favorite soft synths for when I was making beats back in the day was a Moog Taurus soft synth. I think it's still free. I think you can still find it. It's free for Windows users, but it was basically a. If you guys are familiar with the Moog Taurus, it's basically like a foot pedal kind of synthesizer that Moog made for like organ or whatever. But what was cool about it is it made these really kind of subby sounds, and this is the bass that you're hearing right now, like these synthy subby sounds. It was mainly made for like sub sounds basically, or like lower end bass sounds. But another cool thing I really like to do with stuff like that, like the Taurus soft synth, was just basically pitch it high too, so you can kind of get these cool like lead types of synth sounds. But for this one, I was using just like the sub sound. So same thing, I would just play like the MIDI information and then I would bounce it back into its audio form, and that's what you're hearing. So all of it sounding like this. So, and then there's like a synth kind of sound over here. So right here is another, I think this is the same kind of synth, the Taurus synth, but if you pitch it like a few octaves higher, you get this kind of sound. And that's what you're hearing later, with a few like simple effects on it. But that's pretty much it for this beat. But yeah, another thing that I used to do a lot, especially with this program, was use basically a dummy drum loop track. So this one in particular, if we can just listen to it. Yeah, this is kind of like a dummy audio drum loop that I would basically mute. And then I would kind of come in and just use it for its grid, basically. So I would know, like, okay, it's pretty quantized. So when I was doing a lot of cutting and pasting, as you can see, like the kicks kind of line up here. Everything's kind of like on the grid where it's supposed to be. And that's where I know where to line up like snares and kicks and stuff like that. So you get a lot of like this stuff. So this particular drum loop I would use in like almost all my old beats, basically just to use as a guideline when it came to cutting and pasting. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This is Vicer. But yeah, you can still download this track as well as the album off my Bandcamp. I think I still have it for free. You just go to freddiejoachim.bandcamp.com, and this is part of a album called Nights Alone, and it's a free download. So go ahead and just download it, and just enjoy it, I guess. Let's go ahead and open up a new one here, and then we can just talk about it. Let's see. Let's do this one. Let's see here. Ugh. I think my fiance got me sick. Okay. So this track is called Sun Kiss, and I believe this was off Study Guide. Yes, it was off Study Guide. So Study Guide was an album that me and Question put together 10 years ago. I'll go over another track off Study Guide, but we'll just quickly go over this one. So here is the track. We'll play it out. Yeah. Okay, so the sample is basically this. So you can see it's like all chopped up pretty much. And then there's like another filtered sample with a resonance. This is the bass line. So I think with this one, I would just, here, let me just take this off. Whoops. Let me just play it. No, maybe not. Whoops. I don't know if I made this with Reason, so sometimes I would rewire Reason to this program, but also a lot of times I would just make beats on, bass lines through that old Casio keyboard that I had, and I would just basically filter it out or just add effects. And then the drums are super simple. And then if you can see at the top here, this is that dummy track I was talking about again. And then this is just kind of like an organ. I probably played this through Reason. It sounds like it is. Because I know the Casio keyboard didn't have like cool sounds at all. I would use the Casio keyboard for just strings and some other stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This is a really simple track. Yeah, okay. Let's go ahead and open up another one here. Let's see. Let's try this one. So this is a track. I don't think this was really released anywhere. Othello, or Jose Moore, he went by Othello back then. Jose Moore is a MC from Michigan, but he was part of Lightheaded with Braille and Omega Watts, and then we've been working together for like the longest time. But he picked up this track for like a one-off single. But let's go ahead and just listen to it. So this is just like the intro to it. But yeah, this was a track called For Her, and it was released by Jose Moore, but he went by Othello at this time. Um, yeah, the intro you just heard, this is I was just basically using a loop for this one. Sometimes it's cool just to use loops. You don't have to chop up everything. And then this one below it is the same loop, but it's pitched down a full octave. And this is what you can kind of do. This is what I did a lot too back in the day. I still use this kind of technique or this trick or whatever you want to call it, is taking the same sample, especially if it's a loop or, your chops or whatever, and then just pitching it down, duplicating it, and then just pitching it down a full octave. And then you can kind of like use this for like the verses part, like a verse, and then use the normal sample or the pitched up sample for like the hook or the chorus areas. And then together they sound like this. And then this is a bass line. I probably played that on the Casio, it sounds like. And then this one is, I know I played this on the Casio keyboard too, but it had like maybe like 5 to 10 decent sounds that you could actually use. So this was like a vibes sound, and I basically just added I EQ'd it and added some what's it called, some reverb and stuff. So this is how it originally sounds. You can hear that buzzing too from the recording. And then if you just add effects, I was basically just trying to mask it in the original sample. And then here is that dummy track again right here. And then the drums are basically this. Very on the grid with stuff. But what I like to do back in the day when I was working kind of like this style of making drums is the kicks and snares would kind of be on like the grid or quantized. And then I would kind of shift things over. Like this is basically a clap that I would just kind of like place just a little kind of micro shift to the left or the right. And if you can see right here, it's not really lined up. Let me zoom in here. You can see it's not like lined up with the actual snare. But then over here, it is. It's kind of like shifted over just like a little bit. And then over here, it's shifted over a little bit more to the right. And then this one's like on the grid, like you can kind of come up with like different varied sounding like claps or snares. And when you're stacking sounds, basically like this clap is stacked on top of a snare. So that's what I would do a lot. Just kind of shift over the clap or the snap or something like that. But yeah, this is pretty much it for this one. Okay, let's get into one last one, which is the one I really wanted to talk about, and I'm really glad that it was able to, or I was able to find this one, and it wasn't all messed up or anything like that. So this is my most played song on Spotify. It's kind of like a track that it's one of the few beats, like if I know I've made a bunch of beats, but this is one of the very few that I actually really like. And it happens to be one of the most played tracks ever of mine. And it's called Shoulder Kiss. And I made it on here. I made it on Sony Acid Pro. And it was initially released on Study Guide with Question. Initially, we released the album with a label called Milk Dipper for Japan. And Milk Dipper was owned by our friend Tonk, DJ Tonk, out of Japan. And then the vinyl we did a digital release and a CD release with Milk Dipper. This was back in 2009. And then just shortly after that, we did a 10-inch, which is this one right here, a 10-inch vinyl. If you want to see what a 10-inch vinyl looks like, it looks like this. I'll contrast and compare. I know you can't really tell from a video, but we did a 10-inch vinyl with Homegrown Blends, and Homegrown Blends was an independent label out of San Diego, and they were nice enough to do a 10-inch with us. And the 10-inch, actually, the tracks on here were bonus cuts from me and Question, but it has 6 tracks in total, 3 from me and 3 from Question. And 10-inch. And then later on, we would actually release, like a few laters, like 2015, we would release the full version of Study Guide on a 12-inch. And this has all the album stuff. This has pretty much all the tracks from the album. And here it is, the 12-inch. Here, let me show you how a 10-inch and a 12-inch sub sandwich look in comparison. I guess you can't really see. This is a stupid comparison. It's a little bit smaller. Here. There. That's how, it's 2 inches. But yeah, this has all, like, the full length album on it right here. So you can still pick this up. This was released with Mellow Orange, as well as Vinyl Digital picked it up out of Europe. They picked it up for pressing and distribution. But I think you still find it, hopefully. Okay, so this song is called Shoulder Kiss. And let's go ahead and listen to it, I guess. Oh, that's not that. Let's listen to it again. Yeah, Shoulder Kiss. So the intro you just heard, the sample chops are kind of just like a lot of cutting and pasting. Like I said in the first one, what I would do is just basically chop a loop and then just kind of mess with the timing for each of the chops and kind of shift things over. So here is the... I mean, you could like just basically use a loop and it would loop up perfectly pretty much, but then it didn't have like a swing to it basically. So that's why I would use like that chopping method and then mess with the timing of each of those chops. So when you chop it up, basically, and then you pitch it down, it would kind of shift everything over, and then it would kind of put this swing to the chop, basically. Whereas if you just use the actual loop without actually chopping it up, like how I do, you would get this kind of like perfect loop. Like it would just sound more fluid. But then using this method where I chop it, like kind of micro chop it, it would basically put this kind of staggered kind of vibe to the whole kind of loop. And, I know it's like a small detail, but it sounds a little bit better to me anyway. But yeah, this is basically the sample. Okay, and then the drums are really simple here. Let me solo all this stuff here. I think this is it. So yeah, this is like the initial like drum loop that I used. And then I stacked like a clap on top of it or a snap on top of it. And then this is like a shaker. That I played on top, and then I would record my voice on a lot of these old tracks. And then I would add snaps, like just record snaps on top of it. And that's pretty much the drums right there. And then the bass line is, I believe it's this one. And then this is like a synth. And then this over here is like that same Taurus synth. Like everything kind of has like a staggered feel to it, I think. This part right here is just the second part of like the verses, I guess. So it's like a filtered loop, what I think sounds like a phaser or a wah or something like that. And then I just took like small sections of the same sample and then just added delay. And that's pretty much it for the most part. This is like an extended version. So this beat was actually supposed to be part of a song. Me and Lauren Santiago, when we were working together back in the day, like we were trying to like complete like an album, and we completed like a few tracks, but we didn't complete the album. Um, it's not because we didn't like scratch it, like we didn't scratch the idea. It's just like life just kind of got in the way, and we just couldn't complete an album pretty much. Lauren, she finished like an EP initially, um, and she released that on her own, I think. And then we were trying to work like on an album together, like either an EP or a full length album. And this was one of the tracks that was supposed to be part of that project. And then like she moved to New York, and then I moved. I don't even know where I moved. I moved to LA, and it just kind of just didn't work out. So this was. I'll play you some of the the verses, or I mean some of the vocal tracks of what this track was supposed to be. I've been checking on this isn't mixed, so. My own defense, turning your moves into trips. It's getting colder, but I can't get over. This was. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to play too much of it because it's not mixed or anything like that. It's just basically the vocals lined up correctly. But yeah, that's pretty much my most played track on Spotify and probably everywhere else. It's called Shoulder Kiss. It was initially released on Study Guide. It was supposed to be a track that me and Lauren Santiago were going to complete a song and an album for. Just didn't pan out. But yeah, this is kind of like how I used to make beats before I made the switch to Ableton, as well as before I really was making beats on like the MPC or anything like that. I pretty much used this program called Acid Pro, and it kind of got me my start into production. I mean, initially I was just using this program to make loops and then scratch over loops pretty much because I was heavily into like the turntablist scene at the time around like 2001 and 2002. And this program got my foot in the door as far as like how I would record in sequence and stuff, and kind of just learn things on my own using this program. I know not too many producers, if not any producers, still use this program. I think Tall Black Guy still uses this program to produce stuff, but I know he also uses Ableton for his live sets. But yeah, that's pretty much how I put together some of these beats. Maybe I can find some other old sequences that I can share with these, but I don't want to make this video too long. It's already long. But I decided to make it long since I haven't been uploading videos regularly. So yeah, thanks again for tuning in. You can tune into my podcast called Fredcast. It's available on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, as well as Google Play. My podcast is available everywhere pretty much that you would listen to a podcast. I talk about a bunch of different things. A lot of it's music related, but sometimes I talk about a lot of bullshit. And then hopefully I'll have more time to upload more videos because I finished my album. Like my focus was finishing the album and kind of getting everything turned in. And that's why I haven't really been uploading any videos. And then, yeah, just getting work done pretty much because January and February, I was pretty busy with just work in general. And then I'm getting married this month as well. So it's eating up a lot of time. It's good. It's eating up a lot of good time. It's not like it's a burden or anything like that. It's just, we have to take care of a lot of things, me and my fiance. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to upload another video either end of this week or maybe next week if I have a little bit more time. It's just I haven't really been working on anything myself. Like I haven't been working on beats, like my personal stuff, for me to share. But I kind of want to get back into uh, making my own beats, just so I can share with you on YouTube as well as my podcast. But thanks again for tuning in. You can follow me on all social media: Instagram, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, Facebook, Tumblr, or wherever, Twitter. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. All right, peace.